It's early December 2020. We've just come out of the second lockdown in the UK, and since I live in Tier 3, we've gone into a local lockdown which has got very similar restrictions. So I can't really travel, can't go too far away from home, and I have to admit I'm really struggling to take pictures these days. So looking for something to do, I've dug out some old pictures taken in Spain, and I'm going to show you those pictures and talk about the story behind them. Spain is a very popular destination for British bird photographers to go to. It's very bird rich compared to the UK. The weather is considerably better and you have great access to the land as well. In the past I've been to Spain for some weeks or 2 weeks, but even months at a time. And unfortunately in about 3 weeks time, when we come out of the EU, I'll be more restricted on being able to do that in the future. You won't be able to go for months at a time anymore. Anyway, on to the pictures. So we're starting off with a picture taken in the mid-1990s. I'd been to Spain many times before for short trips, but this was my first long trip into Spain. I was there for 5 months, towing the caravan there, you can see on the left hand side, towing that behind me, and you can also see my push bike there as well. I'd been selling pictures for at least a decade at this point, but now I was doing it full time. I'd packed up my job, taken voluntary redundancy, and one of the things you have to do to make a living is to keep your outgoings down, and the cost of travel is one of the biggest expenses in wildlife photography. So I'm there on a very cheap campsite, and I can either walk out into those hills or into the deserts, or go on my bike and keep the outgoings down. It's in the southeast corner of Spain, around the city of Almeria, and it's a desert area, but it's like a stony desert rather than a sandy one. The European beater is very common in the area, and it's a bird I'd photographed many times before in different European countries, but as I drove past this tree, I was really taken with it. It's a tobacco tree, and it's the way the yellow of the flowers match the feathers in the bee-eater, and also the green leaves match the tail of the bee-eater. It just looked absolutely stunning. So I sat in the car and I watched it for a while. I saw the bee-eater land in the tree a few times, but not often. The nesting colony was probably 100 metres away. But I decided it was well worth trying to photograph. So I went back 3 afternoons in succession. You could only photograph it in the afternoon because of the direction of the light, and put a canvas hide up and just sat in. Probably starting about 3 o'clock in the afternoon as the sun is starting to set and it's getting a little bit cooler, but it was still incredibly hot. I would just be wearing my underpants trying to keep cool, and the sweat was just running off my body. On the second afternoon it came and landed on the branch. I did go back for the third afternoon but didn't get any more pictures, but I just thought it was so nice the way the colours matched the bird. Great spotted cuckoo. This was a lucky shot taken out of the car window. Spain is blessed with many dirt tracks that you can just drive along slowly, photographing out of the car window. Now I'm going to confess here that as I was taking these pictures, in the first few seconds that is, I was concentrating on the focus, the exposure, the composition, but in my head I'm thinking, oh, this bird's feeding its youngster. By the time I'd finished taking pictures, I remember this is a cuckoo. They don't feed their own youngsters. It's courtship feeding. But just in those few seconds at the start, because the female appears so small compared to the male, that was just the first thought that flashed into my head. This European swallow was also by the side of a dirt track, but this time I was photographing on foot. I'd parked the car, got out with the tripod and the camera, set it all up. The swallows were resting on some wires, and I noticed that some lorries kept going past into a stone quarry, and every time a lorry went past, all these swallows would launch into the air, and everything was perfect. There was a blue sky and the wind was blowing from me towards the swallows, and the swallows are always going to take off into the wind. So I set up, I focused on one swallow on the wire, waited for the next lorry to come along, and as it did, it launched into the air, and the autofocus was able to keep up with it for that first half a second. Another favourite place for me in Spain is around the town of Bonanza. I've done some very good photography around there. There's lots of old salt pans and again very bird rich. This spoonbill was by the side of a track and I stopped in the car and started to photograph it out of the window, but then you've got the disadvantage, you're looking down at the bird slightly. But I noticed on several occasions the bird disappeared into some reed beds and then you waited perhaps 30 seconds or so and it would come back out again. So on the third occasion it disappeared behind these reed beds. I leapt out of the car, I took my beanbag with me and my biggest lens, ran down to the water's edge and lay down. And it's amazing how close birds will come to you when you are lying down. You lose that human shape, they just see you as a log lying on the floor. You've got to keep still. But the bird came out of the reed beds, started to walk towards me, and you've got that much better low angle. And it came right up to me, very, very close. Also taken at the salt pans at Bonanza, this whimbrel. This time I got out the car, lay down at the water's edge, covered myself with a bit of scrimming and just waited, and all sorts of species of waders came in front of me. A woodchat shrike taken out of the car window, that's with the 600mm Canon lens, and the next shot is with the 1.4 extender on the 600, so an 840mm lens. The quality suffers just a little bit. It's very hard to tell the difference, but it's there. If you get both pictures and look at them side by side and blow them up, the straight 600mm is the better quality, but it's marginal. I do like nice clean backgrounds behind birds, but I also like them when there's two tones, where the green is merging into the blue. In the UK, the corn bunting is a very scarce or localised species. In Spain, extremely common. You see them all of the time. You actually get quite fed up of photographing corn buntings, and on some trips to Spain I promised myself I'm not going to focus on a corn bunting. But I did like this setting. I like the two-tone again in the background and just the fact the bird opened its wings. This was also taken out of the car window, but you don't get to do peregrines from the car very often. It was on the coast down by the Ebro Delta, driving along a very long dirt track along the beach, and this would just be a tired migrant that's just landed on the beach for a rest. Spain probably has more hides available to rent to photograph wildlife than any other country. It seems to be overwhelmed with companies giving various opportunities. This is one of those sites for lammergeier, and almost it was too easy. When you go and do golden eagle, you're going to sit in a hide for 12 hours or so up in Scandinavia. Great bustards in Spain, you'll be doing 14-hour shifts in the hides, so you're sort of suffering for your picture. With the lammergeiers, we had a leisurely breakfast about 7:30. They pick you up about 8:30 in the morning, drive you up the mountain. About 9 o'clock you get out, you walk across this grassy plateau for about 100 metres. You're in the hide, they put the bait out in front of the hide, and within 10 minutes you're surrounded by griffon vultures and lammergeiers. Just seemed too easy, but I still enjoyed doing it. This is a griffon vulture. This is a honey buzzard coming across from Morocco towards Tarifa, and if you're very lucky they come across very low at times. Usually they're quite high up, but sometimes you get a tired bird that's coming in and you can see it's only just keeping above the waves and it just scrapes across the beach. And if you're just standing on the very low cliffs along the coast there, sometimes they're beneath you. This is another rent-a-hide situation, and I came across this hide by accident many years ago. Didn't know who owned it, but eventually I did end up finding out and rented it. It's by Photo Logistics is the name of the company, and it's for sandgrouse. You get the pin-tailed sandgrouse and the black-bellied, and it is absolutely wonderful from a photography point of view. All sorts of other species come in as well. You get red-billed chough and stone curlew and lots of the smaller larks and pipits. It's a really super place to go and photograph. Well, that's it. A few of my favourite pictures from Spain. I enjoyed putting those together, but I do hope I can get out a little bit more and start taking pictures again. Well, especially video, which is really what I'm enjoying shooting today. Thanks for watching.